The Casas Bahia nightmare continues. This video comes from a tip from our dear brother, Claudio Felix. Welcome. Today we are going to talk about a disturbing phenomenon that is destroying the financial health of companies and sinking the free market in Brazil, if that ever existed.
The complete disconnect between the judiciary and the reality of the real world. While business owners face balance sheets in the red, inflation, and the drop in consumption, the labor court seems to believe that the economy works by decree.
As reported by the ND Mace portal, the court simply made a decision and ordered the nearly bankrupt Casas Bahia group to suspend the layoffs and forcibly rehire almost 2,000 employees.
The article is right there. Just imagine, my brother. You closed 298 stores which, whether a little or a lot, used to generate profits for you, but now you have billions in debts and losses. There's no way to keep these businesses open anymore. But you're still required to pay salaries for a workforce that is no longer useful to you. Just imagine the situation. Unfortunately for some, what's a problem for others is no big deal for them. In the mind of a judge sitting in a comfortable office with air conditioning and a fat salary in his account, all it takes is a little signature and some paperwork to solve the problems of thousands of workers. But real-life math doesn't work like that. No one fires people out of malice. If a retail chain closes almost 300 stores and lays off staff, it's because they're bleeding financially. If they don't cut expenses, they go bankrupt. And when a company of that size goes bankrupt, the result is 1,900 people laid off. There are tens of thousands of unemployed people overnight in indirect jobs. Imagine, man, 1,900 people. And how many other services end up being hired directly and indirectly, both for the needs of the employees and the company itself? Imagine delivery services, production of goods to meet that demand, lunches, iFood, and so on. The result, in fact, it's not an exaggeration to say that it's tens of thousands. By analyzing this Casas Bahia case, we can understand the scale of the absurdity. The retailer is going through one of the biggest crises in its history, with accumulated losses and an urgent need for restructuring to avoid going bankrupt for good. The company is closing stores that are no longer profitable, readjusting its operations to try to survive and pay what it owes. Then the labor court comes in and says, no, you can't lay off employees without prior negotiation. You have 5 days to put everyone back on the payroll and 48 hours to reactivate benefit. I ask you, who are watching us? Where's the money going to come from to pay these salaries if the store where these employees worked has been closed and is no longer making any revenue? The company is out of cash. Does this court think that money grows on trees, or that the business owner has an infinite safe in the back? This preliminary decision is the epitome of dystopia. The judiciary ignores the bankruptcy of the business just to pose as the protector of the worker, especially at a time of electoral dispute. Does this make any sense? In practice, this judiciary is pushing the company into the abyss. If Casas Bahia goes bankrupt, who will pay the price? This state utopia of thinking that the government can control supply, demand, and the survival of private businesses without looking at the real numbers is a direct blow to Brazil's business climate. Look at the example this sets for those who want to invest in this country. They simply won't invest. This is what we call here, and try to explain video after video, which business owners classify as legal uncertainty. Now let's try to understand why the judiciary acts with this statist mentality, as if it were a central planning body of a communist regime. The answer becomes very clear when we look at the top of our courts. Take a look at this emblematic case reported by CNN Brazil. During an event at the Palácio do Planalto, President Molusco was caught on microphone openly inviting Minister Alexandre de Moral to have coffee in his office. Look at that level of intimacy. The report is right there. We're not making anything up. Now think about this with me. The supreme gods of Olympus have the constitutional obligation to be an impartial and independent body. The Supreme Court must oversee the executive branch, defend the Constitution, and maintain the balance between the branches of government. As an ordinary citizen like you and me, how can you trust the impartiality of the judiciary when the head of the executive and the most powerful Supreme Court justices are currently exchanging informal invitations to have coffee behind the scenes of power? Making a small comparison so that we can understand, imagine, my dear brother, that you had a very serious case to be heard, and suddenly you caught the judge who is going to rule on your case the next day having coffee at the house of the prosecutor who is accusing you. Would you still accept this trial? Wouldn't you report it and try to change things? This is not, my dear brother, just a matter of institutional dynamics.
This is a clear sign of intimacy. It's this kind of scene that fuels the people's legitimate suspicion that the state has been or is being completely captured.
Where is the separation of powers when the executive and judiciary have coffee together while they shape the direction of the country away from the public eye? What they're going to talk about during that coffee chat is what's on people's mind. Even more so when we remember that this same Supreme Court denied a son the chance to talk to his own father, who is still in prison on charges that didn't convince the public, and denied this father a visit from his own son on Father's Day. Are these gods really being impartial? Let's put the pieces of this puzzle together right now. On one hand, you have a labor court that prevents companies from restructuring, directly interfering in private management, and ignoring reality. On the other hand, you have the top ranks of the judiciary walking hand in hand with the PT government. This is not a coincidence. It's a plan for hegemony. This is about the advance of an authoritarian and statist model in Brazil. In authoritarian regimes with a communist or socialist bias, private property ceases to exist in practice. A businessman becomes just a front for the state. He takes on all the financial risk, bears the losses, but the one who decides whether he can hire, fire, open, or close a store is the bureaucrat in charge. When the judiciary tells a private company that it is required to maintain contracts it cannot afford, it is taking away that company's ability to manage itself. The right to decide is the state taking control of private enterprise without having spent a cent to build that business. Imagine if someone came into your house now as a guest and started bossing you around about what is yours. This is not far from happening, and now let's think about what the inevitable result is of this explosive combination between economic interference and political capture. Whoever said the destruction of the country's future is right, what sane foreign investor would put their money in a country where contracts mean nothing? Where the law of supply and demand is overruled by a court injunction? Where the president invites a minister, one of the so-called gods of Olympus, for private talks while arbitrary decisions suffocate the business sector. Capital, as we've said in another video, is cowardly. It flees from places where there is no legal certainty. When the courts prevent Casas Bahia from cutting costs to try to save itself, it sends a warning to the entire market. And this warning says in big, bold letters, don't come to Brazil, because here you don't control your own business. That's what the bright sign says in big, bold letters.
And in the end, it's the ordinary worker who pays the price, seeing job opportunities disappear, inflation eat away at their salary, and the country sink further into backwardness.
Right now, many supermarkets are raising the minimum wage to 2,000 reais to keep the old schedule, and many people don't accept it. They say that 2,000 reais is too little, but the truth is, those 2,000 reais will be even less if they don't work, since a lot of the money that many people receive from aid and other benefits keeps losing its value more and more.
So, my brothers, as I've already explained in other videos, it would be very simple for a candidate to say, I'm going to raise the salary to 10,000 reais. That could be done. You know how? By reducing purchasing power.
So, it's no use having a lot of paper in your pocket. In fact, you'll pay for that paper too. When they print money, we pay the price, but it's worthless paper.
If before the salary was 2 and now it's 10, those 10 will still buy what the 2 used to buy, if that.
since there was no increase in real wealth for you to be able to get those extra 8,000. So, in practice, you might be seeing 10 on your table, but it's still just 2 because there's no real wealth. We explain this constantly, my brothers, and it's no wonder that many say the nation's IQ is lower than a monkey's IQ. It's because it's simple to understand this kind of thing. Look how many times the minimum wage has changed. Before, when the salary was 80 reais, if you found a 100 real bill, it would last you more than a month. Now look at how much it is. Look at how much 100 reais is worth. And tell me if things have improved just because the numbers have gone up. The current administration has already noticed this, and that's why they insist on this move. Because completely uninformed and dumbed down people buy into this kind of narrative and think it's the solution. And that's why, my informed friend, I ask you to share this video. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and leave a comment saying no to help with engagement. Even if it's just an emoji, it's not easy to do this kind of work, and those who insist on producing this kind of news pay a high price. Right now, the gods of Olympus want to take away Brazilians' right to talk about subjects they aren't formally educated in. In other words, if you're going to talk about medicine, you need to be a doctor. If you're going to talk about politics, you need to be a politician or a journalist. And so it goes, as always, with a nice excuse, a nice label to put on it, saying it's to protect people from misinformation, completely ignoring the fact that when someone is actually spreading misinformation, people themselves stop following them. The person loses credibility. But in a communist state, that's exactly how it happened. The people are treated like children. They are not capable of deciding, not capable of choosing, and everything they do is wrong. And that's why they need daddy and mommy state to take them by the hand like you do with a child and say, stay here, do this, don't cry, suck it up, and so on. That's exactly how we're being treated, and people don't realize it. Unfortunately, most influencers are staying away from this kind of topic because it's true, they're right about that. You only get into trouble by showing this kind of reality. But my brothers, this is literally about our future, about the future of the nation. If people woke up, technology hasn't yet reached the point where it can oppress everyone. It's still possible through collective consciousness for us to change this reality. But the more time we waste believing in the same old solutions, the situation will only intensify. Because the truth is, as you can see, technology is increasingly taking our place. There will come a point when, even if people wake up and unite, even if there is collective consciousness, it won't make any difference anymore. With each passing year, we get closer to realities shown in science fiction, like The Matrix or even The Terminator. The time for change should be now. That said, may God be with you all. Thank you for being here. Take care, and always facing the supernatural here on Inscara News.